Recently, Chelsea Kane came under some heavy fire online because she included some tweets critical of her current image book, Maneaters, in the most recent issue of Maneaters. This was, just to get out of the way, illegal. Tweets are copyrighted works, and the author of the tweet only found out about its inclusion 5 days after it was released on June 9th. So what was so special about these tweets that Chelsea decided to break the law to have them in her book? Before we get into how these tweets criticize the book and how the tweets are portrayed in the book, we're going to have to go over what exactly Maneaters is and why its criticisms are so valid and also so important. Maneaters is a very boldly feminist text. It's overtly just, that's what it's about. It's about feminism. The book is in no way trying to hide its feminist message. There's Hillary Clinton posters on the wall, there's criticisms of dress codes in schools, there's a pink pussy hat on the main character's head a lot of the time. There's zero subtlety to it, but that's not really my complaint. My complaint is that most of the messaging is pretty tame shit. It's pretty obvious. There are a few valid, but mostly uninteresting points. I agree with all of them. In a lot of ways, this book seems to have just been made as a huge middle finger to the people who got pissed off about the Mockingbird controversy, if you can even fucking call it a controversy. The Mockingbird controversy is probably one of the lamest ones comics has ever had. Basically, on a cover of Kane's Mockingbird run, Mockingbird wore a shirt that said, "Ask me about my feminist agenda." And some people weren't happy. And because they weren't happy, Chelsea Kane now has a very prosperous career. So they did a great job. Right now we're on issue 9 of Maneaters, but it's basically issue 7 because 2 of the issues are like fake magazines. You can imagine like Watchmen's fake articles, but instead it's a whole book, and it's also not written by Alan Moore. There's in-universe articles, in-universe ads, in-universe PSAs. It's a lot of nonsense that doesn't account to much. I only skimmed the magazine issues and they didn't interest me, so I didn't bother reading them. I just want to make my blind spots clear. I'm not going to waste my time on something that doesn't matter. So this is a basically identical universe to our own, except the one difference is that when women menstruate, they can turn into wild cats. And they eat people, namely men. But all that takes place before this book, where instead now women take estrogen, put in their water supply, so that they don't turn into wild cats and kill everyone. Our protagonist, a middle school girl, deliberately avoids this water and instead drinks the estrogen-free water that boys are allowed to drink out of bottles. The tweets in issue 9 criticize the book for enforcing the gender binary and having a lot of bio-essentialist and TERF messaging. So let's get into what that means real quick, just surface overview. The gender binary is pretty simple. It's either you're a man or a woman. TERF refers to trans-exclusionary radical feminists. These are people who believe that trans women are not real women, but they still want equal rights for women, the ones that they deem are real women. Some people, i.e. TERFs, think that TERF is a slur, and I think that's perfectly valid. So, I'm gonna make some adjustments to my vocabulary just so I'm really woke, I'm really with it, and I'm also gonna, I think I'm gonna stop saying words like Nazi and white supremacist, and instead I'm gonna say, race critical, just so I'm really woke, I'm really PC. So TERFs are really dumb. The best way to summarize TERF ideology is that they don't think trans women are real women. Feminism, but not for trans people. They believe that masculinity and femininity are defined by the characteristics at birth. This can include things such as genitalia, chromosomes, and menstruation or pregnancy. This is the idea typically touted by right-wing college campus debaters like Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, shitheads. When they want to talk about genders and how many there are, they're really focused on the number. Now, it should be fairly obvious how not radically feminist it is to define womanhood by the ability to give birth. So I'm not going to bother going into it. If you're a TERF, you can fuck off, or you can go watch ContraPoint's video on it so that you can pretend she's not making valid points. If you aren't convinced by Nat, or you are and you want to get some other perspectives, you can also check out Kat's videos. She's done a lot lately about being black and being polyamorous, but she is a trans woman and she has some stuff of that nature in her catalog. Now, these 2 tweets, they were placed on the walls of a concentration camp that was kind of a mix of concentration and conversion therapy. There's some electroshock therapy, there's some forced surgery. It's pretty much made to be as horrible as possible. This essentially ropes together the people who criticize the book for being enforced in gender binary and being kind of TERF adjacent with like people who commit atrocious acts of violence against women. It's pretty sus. It's pretty sus. Now, I'm not saying Chelsea Cain is a TERF. I'm not, because it's probably not true. But it should be apparent that Maneaters is a fundamentally trans-exclusionary text. By making menstruation a representation of womanhood, you're effectively cutting trans women out of the equation, as well as some intersex people. You can also go a step further and say that trans men are excluded because this book about menstruation doesn't include them. Or you could say that by having menstruation represent womanhood, you're saying that trans men are still women. It's a lot of messy shots being fired. It's also important that these tweets were copied verbatim, like copy and pasted, onto the comic book page. And it's not hard to find tweets on Twitter. They also had the little Twitter bird to let you know that it was a tweet in the first place. This is not to say trans people are vacant from the title. There's two instances that I found where trans people are included in this universe. And I feel it's important to remark that, again, I didn't read the magazines. The magazines could have a few different people in it, but for the 7 issues I read, there are 2 examples. First is a letter from the school informing parents that someone menstruated on the school campus. For the safety of our community, female students and any males with female sex organs must report to the school nurse's office for a puberty check before being permitted to attend school. This here addresses trans men's and intersex men's menstruation. The second example is a page like listing people in the Mom's Secret Menstruators Club, which is a twist I didn't really understand. I mean, I don't get why you want to menstruate so bad. I've never seen someone say that menstruating is fun. It happened in issue 7. Issue 8 is a magazine. Issue 9 mostly doesn't talk about it, so it may be sorted out. But the book kind of collapses in on itself under the basic truth that we don't want wildcats killing people. And I know this is supposed to be about bodily autonomy, and I'm 100% for that. You get an abortion if you want, you can do sex work if you want, but I also think you need to vaccinate your kids. I'd rather have my kid in the same room as another kid with polio than another kid who will turn into a wildcat and definitely eat them. So besides that little I don't think the book makes sense. Trans intersex representation. This list of the menstruators includes someone named Joe, who is very obviously male. We know nothing about Joe besides the fact that he menstruates and he's obviously a guy. It's not too far a leap to say that Joe is probably a trans man or an intersex man. So from that, while I'm going to say the text is trans exclusionary in nature, Chelsea Cain tried. She didn't do well, but she tried. This book is clearly trying to tackle bodily autonomy, which recently ran headlines with Alabama's abortion ban and their fascistic banning of a gay rat wedding. Now, the best comparison for this book seems to be the X-Men, and it doesn't go over nearly as well conceptually. The X-Men are capable of not killing people. That's the key difference between the man-eating panthers and the X-Men. They can be good, they can be bad. Turn into a wildcat, you're going to kill someone. The entire concept, the plot, it just doesn't function under any scrutiny. And the scrutiny is fairly surface level. I'm not nitpicking, I'm not fucking cinema sins. And when it's a version of our world with some key differences, we're gonna investigate those differences while we're reading. I'd say there's a high chance that there's a twist down the end that says that, turning into a wildcat, you're not necessarily a bad person. Currently, my little prediction is that the people who make the estrogen-free water kind of forged the crisis and then forced this product to be something that they can sell for a higher price. But we're 7 or 9 issues in, depending on how you count it, and really not much has happened. I think what really should come from this discussion is the inherent turfness in a lot of feminist artwork and, media. For that, I want to pivot entirely to a different area of art, which is music. In 2018, Janelle Monáe, the most talented woman alive and also an open pansexual, released a song called Pink as the single to her new album. It's a feminist unity anthem. It's all about the vagina. That's the pink in the title. Now, it may not go to the lengths to include menstruation in it, something that trans women can never do, but it is still bio-essentialism in a way. Defining women on their genitals over a social idea of femininity probably isn't what they were going for. Back over to man-eaters, though, they include the pussy hats from the women's marches right after Donald Trump got elected. And these, too, are bio-essentialist. Now, I will say, this is definitely obviously referencing the grab her by the pussy moment, so that kind of has its own little thing there. But again, the unification of women is in the vagina, which, again, kicks out a whole lot of women. So, what does this come down to? Personally, I don't think Man-Eaters is worth your time or your money. Its message, despite what is fairly obviously good intentions, does exclude trans people. It's TERF adjacent, at least. Its bio-essentialism is baked into the concept of basing this feminist story around menstruation. It's unavoidable. The main characters, who are supposed to be like resisting oppression, are so thoroughly in the wrong and dangerous and don't seem to know what they're doing. The dangers of doing what they're doing far outweigh the minuscule benefits of menstruating. Now, if it were, say, a mom trying for a kid, that would be, I think, really interesting. But these are middle schoolers. I don't think this is a good book with flaws. I think this is a flawed book with some good bits in it. Dialogue can be snappy, the art is typically pretty good, and the ads, although I won't read a whole book of them, the brief ones they throw in the middle of the actual story issues can be somewhat funny. The art in issue 9 kind of does dip a bit. It's not as good. There's a lot of PNGs that you can tell like they took blood off Google Images or something, and they put it on the page, which just looks really bad. I'm not going to show it because like it's just supposed to be a really bloody post-surgery ward. It's kind of gross, but it doesn't look good, even like as a gross thing. Besides that one issue, the art's pretty good. I don't have any complaints about issues 1 through 7. The problem is that the message and the story and the logic of the universe and the characters, it just sucks. The theme of bio-essentialism is certainly unintentional. I have no doubts about it. The usage of the vagina or menstruation to represent womanhood is a poorly conceived idea that came from a cis writer who didn't consider the implications of that concept on non-cis people. With such a poorly conceived idea, it's no surprise that the book came out so mediocre. But, getting back to what got this all started, the inclusion of these tweets is baffling. Really. It makes no sense. 2 people aired what are pretty understandable and valid critiques of the book, and they were polite. They weren't rude. They weren't making accusations at Chelsea Kane, and Chelsea decided to make it a big deal. Chelsea invited harassment on them. If anything makes Chelsea look like a TERF in this situation, it's how she reacted to having her work criticized for containing TERF ideas. In conclusion, read Bitch Planet. Stream left at London. Like, subscribe, comment, share it with some friends, and trans rights.